Welcome back to r/justnohoa, where people share stories about their crazy homeowner associations that make us feel better about not living in an HOA. And in case you are new around here, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to join our awesome community. Without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled, "The HOA banned the school bus from picking up children with disabilities inside the HOA neighborhood." Let me start this by just saying that I hate when an HOA is able to get away with doing things that hurt others. They did not realize the force that they messed with though, because they decided they were going to mess around with my sister and her kid. Now, my niece is 9 years old and has several disabilities that make her day-to-day life already harder than most 9-year-old kids. She is both developmentally disabled and needs to wear leg braces, so of course safety is a concern. She takes the bus to school, and instead of the normal bus stop outside of the development where they live, she gets the bus to pick her up right in front of the house. The reason that they do this is for safety, and that's why it was put into her school IEP, which covers everything she needs in order to have a safe and good school environment. I could not imagine anyone wanting to have a problem with her getting picked up from there, but apparently the HOA did not like the buses on the streets in the morning. I will talk about their supposed reasonings later, but I really think they just didn't want to hear the noise of a bus for 2 minutes in the morning. And yeah guys, if there is one person in the world who would be upset by the noise of a school bus in the morning, obviously it would be a busybody HOA president. Anyway, they called the school board and ended up getting the bus out of the development, and my sister needed to walk my niece to a busy road and keep her from getting hurt until the bus showed up. We were all extremely mad and kept telling the school that it went against the ADA rules to not follow her IEP. And by the way, ripe stars, if I'm not completely mistaken, IEP stands for Individualized Education Program. Either way, if it seems odd how involved I was with this, we have a very close family and also not a small one, so my niece had a good number of people fighting for her. We ended up getting her bus back for the last month of the school year, and during the summer though, the HOA was going to try and pull another stunt to stop the buses come September. They held a meeting and made a vote to not allow any buses in the district. So now, instead of just a complaint, they had it in the actual bylaws for the community. It turns out though that we were not the only people angry about this and wanting to do something about it. My niece was not the only special needs child in that development, and there were 2 other families especially struggling when they took away the buses the first time. They just did not know how to fight back and were spending months having an extremely hard time getting their kids to school. One of which was a kid who was physically disabled, and getting her in and out of the car and then onto a bus was such a struggle that some of the mornings she ended up missing the bus altogether and needing to drive her daughter to the school, causing her to be late for work. The other was an autistic boy that while he was able to walk to the alternate bus stop, the traffic on it became dangerous for him. He wanted to run into the traffic because he couldn't understand that it was not safe, and his mother spent every morning worried that her son was going to get into the traffic and get run over. 3 families were always better than one though, and we brought them into the little fight we had created. We decided that a lawsuit was the only thing that was going to wake the HOA up, and we took them to court. We knew that the bylaws they created were technically allowed, but would they really be seen as more important than the safety of disabled children? Keep in mind, we were not fighting for the buses to be allowed to go door to door in the neighborhood. It was just for the kids with an IEP that needed it to be able to achieve that service. However, we still ended up getting support by other parents that were not affected directly by it, but thought what they were doing to our kids was horrible. When I say that we started a mini revolution, I meant it. The local news even came to cover the lawsuit that was happening because of how crazy it was starting to get. The HOA had a lawyer of their own, but one of the parents in the neighborhood actually was a lawyer and agreed to represent the case for free. My sister almost cried at how happy she was that the community seemed to just be rallying behind her for her kids' sake. Now keep in mind, the HOA definitely had their own side of people, and while ours came from different areas, their side all lived in the development and had more of a leg to stand on because of it. Their lawyer argued that the buses were causing a significant wear and tear to the roads and that it made more sense for buses to pick up kids outside of the development. He said that since it was now in the bylaws, it was perfectly legal for them to ask the school to create that new bus stop and stop entering the community. Our lawyer argued back that the safety of the children outweighs the fact that the roads would get damaged. Even if they created this rule in the bylaws, the federal and state laws of the IEP outweighed it, and the buses had every right to enter into the development to get my niece and the other disabled kids. It turns out that our lawyer seemed to scare theirs, and suddenly they wanted to create an agreement. It turns out that their lawyer told them the HOA insurance was not going to cover his cost if this went any further in court. He recommended that they get rid of the rule and allow the buses back into the development. The HOA was not happy about this, but since they were going to lose their lawyer, they didn't have a choice and ended up getting rid of the rule and allowing the buses back into the development to pick up the kids. They clearly were not happy about it and were still trying to create bylaws that would indirectly affect the buses, like no loud vehicles allowed before certain hours of the day, but none of those ended up sticking and my niece was able to finally get on the bus from the safety of her own sidewalk. The fact that my family and the family of other kids were supported by other members of the school made me extremely happy, because even though they were not directly affected, they knew it was wrong and the increased voices helped us get it the attention it needed. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I think this story once again shows that if you stick up for your rights, and especially if you try and fight the HOA, more often than not you will actually succeed. Especially if you work together with other neighbors or people from around the community. The next one is titled Bogan Revenge at its Finest. My SO is 23 with an open license but currently no car. He grew up working on cars with his dad and has had more car-related jobs, from rentals to detailing to mechanics, than I can count. He loves cars and knows more about them than anyone I've ever met. He has owned many cars and is a skilled but mostly responsible driver. He has a friend who is young and does not yet have a license, but had recently gotten a supposedly great deal on a kind of junky looking BMW, no idea what kind, I'm a chick, I don't know anything about cars, which he lent to my SO for a few days to run errands, since without a license he cannot drive it anyway. So my SO comes over with the car one day after offering to take me to an appointment. When we go downstairs, we both have a laugh at it. It has a terrible patchy paint job, a huge crappy wing hanging off it, and those stupid rear window decals from car accessory manufacturers that losers think will make them go faster. It screams Bogan street cred. It's quite nice on the inside though, tan leather interior and everything, and my SO tells me that his friend did in fact get a good deal, as the car has low mileage and is in great working condition. I was also surprised to learn that it is really zippy. On the way back from my appointment, we are cruising down the highway. There are about 6 lanes going in each direction, and every few hundred meters or so there is a steel arch that goes over the road with digital LED speed signs hanging down. The speed limit was set to 100 km per hour, which is normal considering it was a quiet afternoon with not a lot of cars on the road, and the only one near us was a dark blue sedan just ahead in the lane left of us. We are just chilling listening to the radio with the windows down when a white mid to late 90s Holden Commodore, Aussies will see where this is going, passes us on the right. We don't notice them at this point, but when they get about 2 car lengths ahead of us, we see arms protruding from the left side of the vehicle and motioning at the blue sedan. The blue car's windows are rolled down, but nothing seems to be happening, so the Commodore moves into our lane to drive alongside them. An arm comes out of the Holden's passenger window waving an unopened can of XXXX Gold beer. Now, for non-Aussies, XXXX Gold and Commodores are both huge Bogan identifiers and go together like colored mohawks and tartan pants go with punk kids. You see, the two things together can usually conclude with about 95% accuracy that the owner of those things is a Bogan. Anyway, at this point it has become clear that the blue sedan is carrying a number of women and the guy in the Holden's passenger seat is offering the lady driver a beer. Thankfully it's not working, the women merge into the lane to their left and hang back to escape. The Holden dangerously follows, but not before chucking an empty tinny out of the window. At this point, my SO decides to intervene. We also move to the left with the Holden in front of us and the sedan to our left. The women look a bit scared and again change lanes to their left, so we take their spot and speed up until we are alongside the Holden again. They realize what they've gotten into now and move to the right to escape us. We follow though. At this point, almost all of the traffic is in the left lanes and we are in the right lanes. We look over at them and the passenger assesses our swagmobile and flips us off right as the driver plants his foot on the accelerator. There is no one ahead of us and my SO looks at me and says, "Watch this." This little beamer knew how to go, and go it did. We sped right up past them and made sure to be only just ahead of them. They seemed surprised by our swift acceleration and would get faster and faster to try and catch up, but we made sure to always just stay in front. At just over 200 km per hour, we pull back slightly and quickly move into the clear left lane. As I previously mentioned, it was a quiet afternoon and there was a fair distance between cars in the busier lanes. We pull back some more and duck to the left again, and then one last time as we resume cruising at the speed limit, assimilated with all the other cars. As this is happening, we see the Holden continuing to hurtle along at top speed, apparently unaware that we were no longer trying to tail them. Now my SO is quite competitive and I know he would never give up that easily, especially where cars are concerned, so I ask him why he let the guy go, and he replies, "Babe, you know I've been driving around here a long time. I know this road like the back of my hand. I also know exactly which of those LED speed signs hanging overhead have hidden speed cameras behind them. I just gave them a little coaxing. Now they will be receiving a nice little present in the mail." And sure enough, we had leveled out just before the camera, while the douchebags had shot straight through it. And ripe stars, I gotta say, given that OP in the story is talking about kilometers per hour and driving around 200 kilometers per hour, I suppose that this story took place in Europe. I guess 200 kilometers per hour is like 125 miles per hour. And I'm not even sure if there are any roads in the United States where you are legally allowed to drive that kind of speed. If there are any, please let me know. Anyway, if you enjoy the stories about revenge and crazy neighbors, then I would really appreciate it if you could also like the video and maybe post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support my channel. Thank you so much for your awesome support, it is very much appreciated and helps me tremendously. The next one is titled "Sweet Revenge on My Worst Employer Ever." 2 years ago, I lived in a touristy area of Ontario and worked as a server and bartender at a fairly well-known Canadian restaurant chain. It is no exaggeration to state the front of house manager (FOH), assistant manager (S-man), and general manager (GM) are among the 3 of the dumbest people I've ever known in my life. My 4 months working at this place were really awful and soul-crushing, but the tip money was unreal, so I could tolerate it. This was essentially the management dynamic. FOH was a lazy dude who projected his own laziness onto the front of house staff, and he was prone to giving lectures about how lazy we all were and constantly threatening us with a stack of resumes he had in the office. He would also make insanely creepy remarks about female employees, one of whom was my sister, so super awesome, and racist comments about customers. S-man was essentially the kind of person who never had any power in her life. She then used her new power to make our lives miserable. Her first order of business was removing any information about workers' rights from the premises. Finally, GM was just a manipulative, sadistic misogynist who was just straight up abusive to female staff. Also, these 3 people hated each other and made no attempt to hide it. Basically, by the end of the tourist season, I gave no Fs about my job and wanted out. I started a work to rules strike, which supremely slowed down operations in hopes of getting fired. Fortunately, FOH decided to stop scheduling me, which led to an intense confrontation where he was very sure that I, a fairly physically imposing guy, was going to beat the lights out of him. But instead I told him to screw himself, went home and read the Employment Standards Act in its entirety. I wrote a lengthy report to the Ministry of Labor citing at least 16 violations of the Employment Standards Act. For the better part of the next year, they were under investigation, which resulted in me getting a payout for termination, constructive dismissal, and them getting a number of fines. The sweetest part being every time I heard from my caseworker, she spent a good amount of our conversation complaining about how awful the management was to deal with. The last I heard from her, the ministry was still doing regular inspections of this restaurant since they've now been red flagged for crappy labor practices. It was just so satisfying. The next one is titled, "A customer was mad I gave them extra time, so I gave them less." I am 31 male, a trucker for a parcel shipping company, and my main job is to pick up parcels from big customers and haul it back to the terminal for distribution. I've been doing this for about 7 years now, and I'm very good at my job. I have a set route every day and the same customers. They have a deadline for pickup which is stated in a contract, but traffic is unreliable and sometimes stuff just happens. I sometimes have extra pickups or in rare cases deliveries that make me a little late. Usually no problem, I know my route and can drive in the lost time. Or I have their number and can call to tell them that I'll be late. I have a customer who is set to be picked up from, let's say, 17 o'clock every day. Because I'm a very efficient driver, I rarely need to be there before 17:30 to be in time for my next customer. Which gives them extra time to pack orders as they are still open until about 19 in the evening. There are no other trucks incoming at the time, so I'm not blocking anything. Extra time should be good, right? Except they have this annoying habit of never being finished on time, and even when they see me loading up the truck, they just dally around not finishing. Usually, they come running when I'm closing the truck to tell me that they got more and I need to wait, before they run around trying to pack and secure the last pallet. And sometimes, when I get there, they are not. There will be a finished pallet ready for me, but no people. No problem though, I just load up and leave. Usually about 10 to 15 minutes later, they then call me to say, I forgot a pallet and need to turn around. That they cannot be expected to be done because they never know when I arrive. I always arrive within a 15-minute window every day. If I'm later, I call them, they have extra time and they can still not be finished on time. And then try to blame it on me. Not the first time this has happened. I got so tired of it, I went back to arriving exactly at my scheduled time and leaving on time. They were not finished? Too bad. I have the contract on my side. They agreed to it and signed it. They then tried to call my boss and complain because now I left almost 30 minutes earlier than before. But he is awesome and just said, tough luck, not my problem. And yeah, ripe stars, I would definitely say it is always good to have a boss that has your back, because it can be already difficult enough to have co-workers that might be working against you, but if then on top of that the boss is also against you and not on your side, you are definitely in for some trouble. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel, but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.